Your native language has built a cage around your mind. A cage that shapes how you think, feel, and understand the world around you. And most of us don't even know we're in it. Last year I read The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, a Russian novelist. The book just might be the most profound piece of fictional literature I've ever read. The presentation of the characters, the way in which they each represented a unique aspect of the human condition, was like nothing I've ever read before. Naturally, my next step was to go online and read commentary on the novel. And immediately I was made aware that the translation I had read was known for being stiff, formal in nature when compared to the original Russian text. This gutted me. The book is entirely character-driven. So much of the narrative was crafted by the dialogue shared between persons in the story. And now, I felt as if I had gathered a watered-down understanding of the characters that had impacted me so much. This is the dilemma of language. Our limited capacity to understand the language of others caps our ability to fully understand the sentiment of their speech. Speech has long been seen as the window to the soul. This being said, if we cannot understand another's language, we effectively limit our ability to clearly see their heart. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine that someone gives you an oil painting and tells you to recreate it. However, they do not give you oil paint, they give you colored markers. While you may be able to create something that is recognizable as a derivative of the original painting, your creation will be markedly different from theirs. There will be a difference in the color grade. There will be a difference in the gloss of the finish. The overall character of the painting will be different. The same thing happens when you translate speech from one language to another. While you can still understand the sentiment and recognize the ideas being shared as an analog to the original, you miss out on some of the nuanced details. If you know a second language, you know that there are some phrases or words in your language that genuinely do not have a good English interpretation. In Greek, there is a word called pareia. This word describes the feelings of being around a tight group of friends where you feel completely at home. It would take a few sentences to express that feeling in English. Another good example is that in Russian, there isn't one general word for blue. They have multiple words for different shades of blue, but no umbrella term. Light blue is goluboy. Dark blue is sini. And here's where it gets strange. The difference doesn't just live in language. It affects the way they see the world. When researchers put a native Russian speaker and a native English speaker in front of different shades of blue and ask them to point out which ones are different, the Russian speaker can routinely distinguish between the shades more readily, because their language drew a line that the English speakers did not. In therapy sessions, therapists will often put a list of feeling words in front of their clients. When we process our emotions, we often try to use the words we know to make sense of how we feel. Our ability to share, express, and even understand our emotions is often capped by the words available to us. Language is effectively the web that ties together our cognitive processes. In 2013, a behavioral economist at UCLA named Keith Chen conducted a study comparing the habits of two groups of people. One group had a linguistic background of languages that had future tenses, the other group did not. German, Chinese, Japanese, Dutch, and Scandinavian languages do not delineate between the present and future in their syntax. English, Spanish, and French do. Chen found that those who had a background in futureless languages were 24% less likely to smoke, 29% more likely to exercise, and accumulated, on average, 39% more savings by retirement. Those with a linguistic divide between the present and future saw the future as more transient, and therefore less pressing. And this difference in perception had pronounced effects on their behavior. This is worth sitting with. If language shapes how we think, how we feel, and how we behave, then someone who speaks a language you don't isn't just communicating differently than you. They are living in a world you've never visited. A researcher once asked Japanese American women to finish sentences, in English one time, in Japanese a few months later. When asked to finish the sentence, "When my wishes conflict with my family," in English one woman wrote, "I do what I want." In Japanese she wrote, "It is a time of great unhappiness." Same woman, same family, completely different answers. There's a saying that goes, one who speaks two languages has two souls, two entirely different webs of cognitive circuitry that they can operate within. The ability to think, feel, and live in two worlds at the same time. And when you connect with someone like this, without access to both of these worlds, you are capped in your ability to access parts of their mind, heart, and soul. In America, roughly 80% of the population speaks only English at home compared to a much larger share of the world's population navigating multiple languages daily. This could be the case for a number of reasons. You can make the argument that most people only learn a secondary language out of necessity, that because the vast majority of Americans know English, it seems like a waste of time and energy to pursue a second language. My argument to that sentiment would be that it should be considered a necessity to pursue better ways to understand the world around you and the people that inhabit it. I believe that we have an obligation to sacrifice our own comfort in order to better care for others. To learn someone's language, or even to genuinely pursue understanding their culture, is to say, your world matters enough for me to try to enter it. And in a world as loud and abrasive as the world we live in, gestures like this can change someone's entire conception of what it means to be loved. At the end of the day, we all want to be understood. But reaching a level of understanding that allows us to see past the surface often requires effort, and sometimes it requires a willingness to step outside of the world our native language has built for us and recognize that someone else's is just as real. When we step outside the comfort of our own world and reach towards someone else's, we experience a shift. We become less certain that our own perception of the world is the only way of seeing things and become more open to hearing out others. And that openness, that vulnerability, is how we step outside of our cage and finally meet each other. If you enjoy these videos and would like a more in-depth analysis of these topics, please subscribe to The Limited Mind on Substack.